Time now to take a look at some of the business headlines. And the Paris Air Show is kicking off here in France, of course. This year, however, trade wars and security concerns are casting a shadow over the big event. To tell us more, we're joined on set by Yuka Roya. Yuka, what are the highlights you think we should be looking out for in this year's event?
Well, Eve, of course, the biennial event is the largest aerospace gathering in the world. The 53rd edition is being held at Le Bourget airfield just outside Paris, and it runs all week. Now, it comes as the $150 billion industry is facing uncertainties with concerns over a slowdown, pessimism exacerbated by the recent Boeing 737 MAX crisis. Meanwhile, plane makers are eager to show steps they're taking to make their jets more fuel efficient and reduce their carbon emissions. Greener, high-tech aeroplanes, including autonomous and all-electric planes, are among the highlights of the show. Let's take a listen to one industry expert.
I think being environmentally sound is becoming a bigger topic. Both Airbus and Boeing, to name two companies, are looking at how they can improve their products and use new technologies to be able to be more environmentally sound in terms of the emissions from aircraft, for instance. You're going to see people talking about how they're using technologies like artificial intelligence to help them improve how they design, how they manufacture, and how they support aircraft.
Now, Boeing is struggling to rebuild public confidence since two recent fatal crashes grounded its most popular 737 MAX jets worldwide. CEO Dennis Muilenburg admits it will take time to win back people's confidence in the safety of Boeing planes. Ahead of the airshow's opening, he said the company made a mistake in handling the jet's problematic warning system before two crashes killed 346 people in the space of 5 months. He promised more transparency as the plane maker works to get the grounded planes back in flight. It's time now to check in on the day's trading action. Asian shares mostly bounced back at the start of the week, though chip makers continue to be under pressure since the sell-off on Wall Street last Friday. Hong Kong stocks rose as investors welcomed a decision by the city's government to suspend plans for a controversial extradition law. Oil prices rose amid geopolitical tensions over the tanker attacks in the Gulf of Oman. Earlier in our programme, Stephen Innes, managing partner at SPI Asset Management, told us that the oil market may be slightly overreacting.
Oil markets are generally quite bearish because of the global growth narrative, but this was a surprising uptick. Obviously, we're keeping track of the headlines here to see if there's an escalation in warmongering out of the U.S., but we really believe this is probably a little bit more exaggerated. However, we do think that this ongoing terrorist issue will be a significant risk to the supply chain, so we think that's going to be supportive for oil prices, at least over the near term.
Stephen Innes speaking earlier. It's been almost 2 weeks since the Trump administration banned U.S. cruise ships from heading to Cuba as it stepped up sanctions against Havana over its support for Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro. Now Cuba's tourism industry is starting to feel the pinch. Last year, 40% of nearly 900,000 tourists who visited the island on cruise ships were Americans. Luke Trago takes a look.
Deserted streets, taxis standing idle, and empty ports in Cuba. With the end of visiting US cruise ships has come a major blow to the island's tourist sector.
When
the cruise ships came, the whole country had life. There was a lot of tourism. They were riding in cars, carriages, using the city's buses. There was more life. Now everything's idle. There's no tourism. People still come, but far fewer.
It comes down to renewed sanctions from Washington, which wants to boost pressure on Havana for its support of Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro. As such, the last US vessel left port earlier this month, with others inbound hastily rerouting to other Caribbean destinations. With 142,000 US citizens arriving in Cuba by cruise ship in the first 4 months of this year, half of all US visitors, numbers are now set to plummet, along with revenue from the money they spend.
The numbers are that we have lost 60% of the sales. That's very hard. It has a strong impact, and we are already thinking about how we're going to deal with this crisis.
It's not impossible for US tourists still to arrive, but with Washington cracking down, it's become a lot harder. Cruise ships aren't the only vessels affected. Private boats and air travel are all hit too.
France 24's Luke Schrago reporting there, and that wraps up the business news.
Thanks a lot, UK Royer there with our business update. Turning now